Welcome to the Cyber Sangha podcast. Cyber Sangha is a program of free live broadcasts, launched in 2009 by renowned teacher and author Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche. Join us as we draw on ancient Tibetan wisdom to discover how to connect with our best self and live to our highest potential. The following conversation, The Spirit of Generosity, to give from the heart, first learn to let go, happened on June 20th, 2023 as a Science and Spirituality Dialogue with Roshi, Joan, Halifax, Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, and host Alejandro Chaoul. This was part of a year-long series on embracing life with wisdom and compassion. This content is for informational purposes only. Listeners should consult medical professionals for any physical or mental health concerns. Please use headphones and do not meditate while driving or operating machinery.
Welcome everyone, welcome Rinpoche and Roshi to our Cyber Sangha today. Today we're going to be focusing on attachment and generosity, the spirit of generosity, to give from the heart and first learn to let go. And this is part of a larger series that we've been doing this year on different emotions and the antidotes. Again, for those who are new to Cyber Sangha, welcome. To those who have been following many of the events, welcome too. And as some of you know, this is really the brainchild of Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, who started this even before COVID, and this idea that through the website, through these platforms, we can actually still have a Sangha. We can feel in community. And we can feel in community by every month during the full moon. We do this practice for 24 hours, passing the baton, as you were, from the east coast of the United States to Finland, and from Finland to Colombia, and from there to Costa Rica, and from there to the west coast, and so forth, going all around and doing the practices also in different languages, and beautifully to feel connected for 24 hours. And then also Rinpoche does different talks and different dialogues, and we've been doing this, what we call science and spirituality dialogues, which now are more on the emotions and how we deal with them. So again, welcome all, and Roshi, welcome to our platform. I know Roshi for many years, and it's wonderful to have you here. Actually, Rinpoche and Roshi know for many years, and for a long time they hadn't seen each other, and we all saw each other at Blue Spirit in Costa Rica, and it was lovely. And I'll say a few things about Roshi, although I think most people do know her. She's the founder and head teacher of the Upaya Zen Center in Santa Fe, New Mexico. She's a social activist, an author, and really a pioneer in the field of end-of-life care. I remember when we brought her also to MD Anderson to teach on this, and she's received many awards and honors from many institutions around the world for her work on social environmental activist and the end-of-life care. She has worked before with Stan Groff, in the Maryland Psychiatric Research Center with dying cancer patients, and this has continued to be one of her main works. She is a director of the project on being with dying and founder of the Upaya Prison Project. She goes to Nepal, developing projects there on meditation, and in the Nomads clinics, and she has many books, including The Human Encounter with Death, Standing at the Edge, and the last one being a number of meditations together. It's called In a Moment, In a Breath, 55 meditations to cultivate a courageous heart. So it's kind of more than a book, it's a box set of cards, and you can take a card and do a meditation every day. So welcome, Roshi, welcome.
Thank you very much. Very nice to see you both.
Thank you. And I'll say a few words of Rinpoche, although I think everyone here knows him, but not only he's the founder, the creator of Cyber Sangha, he's a Geshe, so that means the highest philosophical degree in the Tibetan tradition, graduated from Menri Monastery in '86, and then went with his teacher, Lopun Tenzin Namdak, to Tibet, and then came back. And then we were lucky that he decided to come to the West, and we've been having him in the West for a little over 30 years. And knowing our mind, he designs projects and platforms to really address what we need. He's the founder and spiritual director of Ligmincha International, with centers over 35 places all around the world. He's a author of numerous books that are also in audiobooks, and I could say many more. He's been my teacher for 30 years, and it's wonderful to be here with both of you. Thank you. So, as we start with the topic of attachment and then kind of move to generosity, although I guess they're part of the same wavelength, I'd like to start with you, Roshi. When we talk about attachment, and not so much, as we were saying earlier, not so much in the kind of in the Buddhist textual way, but in your own life, how have you felt that this is an important part of your life, that, you know, you became a PhD, you're very famous, then, you know, what are the things that you need to let go, and how is that possible to do?
Well, that's a wonderful question. And, you know, I think I would need some time to think about it. You know, I'm not a person who sought much. In other words, I really responded to what's before me. And actually what's before me right now is climate change and global suffering. And, you know, maybe you could call that attachment. I don't think so. It really comes out of the experience of profound concern about the well-being of all creatures, human beings, but also, you know, the future generations. So, you know, my own life has not been about writing books or getting famous or anything like that. It has been really about responding to what's before me. And how does attachment play in that? Maybe I'm attached to, personally, you know, to alleviating suffering. Yeah, I'm attached to that. And I think that's shaped my path and my life and who I am.
Thank you. So maybe going into more the classic also attachment, and how Rinpoche, when you lived in the monastery, this is clearly kind of a vow, right? You know, to not fall into attachment. And so maybe we can start there, and going from there on how you notice that in your married life, in your life in the West, and different kinds of attachment, right? Because, you know, sometimes, and we get this question many times, what about attachment to our kids, right? You talk a lot, Rinpoche, about, you know, Senge and the family. Maybe you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, first of all, let's welcome Roshi, and happy to have you with us here. Definitely attached to this moment. Yeah, so generally, in the teachings, of course, when we talk about attachment, there's clearly a sense of introvert and inward. We are attached to our identity, that whatever we identify with, who we are based on our conditions, what we want based on our needs, and circumstances. Definitely, that identity has plenty of attachments. And externally, of course, then you have very basic things in life, basic needs in life. And as you're talking about the children, I definitely have a lot of attachment there. And finally, I thought when Singh left uh, 2 weeks ago, he went to Nepal and as at 17 years old, going to in the school, orphanage school there, trying to do some summer volunteering there. I thought me and my wife said, okay, finally he leaves the home, feeling a little bit relieved. But then I start to realize it's not over. I'm thinking, okay, what are you doing today? What's your schedule? So clearly, constantly attachment is there, and But on the other hand, I also feel that one of the the strongest place of, I feel, the selflessness is with the child. Of course, my own child, but strongest sense of selflessness. It's nothing to compare with the meditation and what I can talk about the selflessness in so many ways, in so many different ways, but it always seems like a there end of the day. But when it comes to the child, clearly there is this deep sense of less attached to my sense of self than more attached to this being out there. So, but obviously, I was talking about how much personally I felt growth because of being a father, being a husband, having family. But my friends and other lamas say that's your attachment. That's not a growth that you think of. And maybe it's true. That's partly my attachment, but I think we also grow through our attachment. And in a situation in this relationship, one of the strongest place where I feel that attachment, it's you really have to let go of your ideas. You have to. We all have a lot of ideas, and especially with the relationship, the children, and the biggest gift that you can give to someone is the space that they need uh, to find themselves, to go through their pain, find themselves, and not like trying to make them you, but trying to be a means to trying to find themselves who they are searching to be. So and those things are, I feel, as a personal, and life is a wonderful experience and definitely not easy one. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Let me probe you a little more before I go back to Roshi. Because this is particularly with kids, I think this is a question that a lot of people, what is a healthy attachment? What is it that we can let go? As you were saying, Rinpoche was saying, there is this attachment, but there's also a way of able to let go, which doesn't mean that you're not connected to Sangha in this case, but with anything, that we are able to let go and still be connected. And then I want to go into the same, like in activism, you're connected to, like Roshi was saying, in terms of what's going on with the environment and how can we, what are we needing to let go and still act? So, Rinpoche, let me, since you're talking about kids, and I know a lot of people relate to this, if you can say a little more about that before I move to Roshi.
So the sense of healthy attachment, I feel that first of all, being aware of your own identity, that who is attached, and then being aware of what kind of attachment and to whom you are attached to, what kind of conditions that it creates. And then in the end, it feels like a very much, at the end of the day, that you don't add your own pain, identity, your own conflict, your own pain, your own suffering, your own weakness, your own sense of loss into the collective place of where there is already missing all those qualities. I think even with the children, and many times it's children are always beautiful. I think they're always perfect. They're beautiful. Every conflict when you have with the children, I always find it, I truly say that, mean it, I feel it, even though there are moments of challenging, that they are never a problem. It's our inability to manage the circumstances, changes, their hormone changes, the teenage, they are growing, their environment they're living in, their needs. We always keep on comparing ourselves to them and not understanding it. Their time is different. We are different generations, especially in our case, different culture we grow up with. So it's always a issue is more ability to understand, adapt in new situations. And if you understand the new situation, then you can bring your best to change something. Otherwise, just as a pure suffering and conflict. You don't bring anything into those conflict situations apart from contributing more pain and conflict in the situation. So to be more in a clear place oneself in the first place, I feel, especially as a parenting, I believe in any relationship, even a couple relationship or even a student-teacher relationship, I think it's the same.
Yeah, so letting go, as you call the pain body of it, but still maintaining that relationship. And Roshi, I mean, you do so many things for the world, and I imagine that as you do them, there's also this sense of, I want a specific outcome. Is there possible, as sometimes we hear in the teachings, can we let go of the outcome and still continue doing all the amazing work that you're doing? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Suzuki Roshi shared a wonderful term, and that is no gaining idea. No gaining idea. So in, the practice, attachment to outcome actually can breed futility among other unhealthy qualities. And that doesn't mean, however, that you don't do the very best that you can. Sometimes your best is rather small. That's that day or that moment. Sometimes your best is rather magnificent, and that's that day and that moment. But no matter what you do, if you have a gaining idea, if you have an attachment to outcome, it can actually be the cause of really profound suffering for yourself and those whom you're endeavoring to serve. So that's basically my perspective. We want the best for others. Working with dying people certainly gave me the profound opportunity to come to the truth that every person with whom I worked was going to meet death sooner rather than later. The notion of a good death, which was very popular some decades ago, produced behaviors in caregivers which were actually harmful to others, to those whom they were caring for, to family members, to themselves, and to the institutions in which they were serving. So this was a big lesson for me as I watched this happening as a practitioner and as someone who came alongside many dying people over the years. And the lesson really sunk deep into my marrow, that we have to actually let go of some notion of what is the right thing or the right outcome and be much more present to whatever's arising in the moment.
Wonderful, thank you. Rinpoche, you too, having created Ligmincha International, you create so many projects, and I know, as in your book, Spontaneous Creativity, but I would imagine that at some point you do have kind of, okay, I'm thinking it will be this way, right? You have some, what I sometimes call a plan A. But then you're able to let go and let it be spontaneous. Can you talk a little about that, about not being attached to that outcome, being spontaneous, but things still manifest? A lot of people think, well, if you don't have that, they won't manifest.
So over the age, as we get older, I think it changes what kind of attachment out you have, what kind of outcome you're expecting, how strong you want that those outcome is. It changes, and I could clearly say I was just talking with my wife today and with a friend today, and just that if I have to start this again this age now, I don't think I will do it. I don't feel like I don't have the same kind of fire and same kind of drive. I do have a lot of fire. I do have a lot of drive, but it's a different kind of fire and different kind of drive than 30 years ago. So I think one thing is always, as Roshi said, that I, whenever I started everything, I don't have any plan. Really did not have any particular plan to say, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It always kind of just staying your senses open, your eye open, your heart open, and wherever that particular situation, circumstances, you see something can be happened, can be done. And I just mainly feeling like allowing these things to happen. And then, of course, when you are trying to have those, allowing those to happen, then you have some kind of goals, you have some kind of attachment there, and you do push a little bit toward those goals. And in the end, I believe that even though we think we know a lot of results and outcome, I don't feel in front of this big universe. I feel like I cannot say outcome should be something like that. Even though sometimes negative happens, I don't think we cannot say it's a negative, because I think it's a negative. We should change it into the positive situation. Even the war, we definitely don't want the war. COVID, we definitely don't want the COVID. Global warming, we definitely don't want the global warming. But who knows, in some sense, how do I know there might be some bigger purpose of something happening in a very bigger scale that I didn't have any clue about? So sometimes I try to be a little bit more in life, in the situations in life, a little bit more, okay, we need, whatever I understand this very moment, what needs to be done the best, trying to do the best, definitely not interfere the process, not become the obstacle, and trying to support the flow of the change wherever it's trying to go, whatever the best that your own awareness is bringing, trying to do your best, but always remembering, do I know what outcome should be? In deep inside, I believe I do not know, but I still can go move forward, and what I believe in, move forward to that, but always staying open. If there's a bigger than what I believe, I'm open to whatever the circumstance, the outcome is, even it is totally opposite than I wish. Even the children like that, you're trying to tell them what do you think. You're trying to trigger them, saying opposite than what they get you. They get, okay. I don't know where you're coming from, what you want from me, right? So in the same sense, in a bigger sense in the life, I feel that's I think it's good to keep more sense of open than trying to have too much clear idea about what's supposed to be.
Thank you. So Roshi, as you were saying, that Suzuki Roshi, I mean, like this aspect of actually not only not clinging to the result, but actually that doing that, it's a huge obstacle. So how do we let go for causes that we're so committed to? How is that? And does generosity, or what qualities are there that we should embrace or cultivate to be able to keep us in that strength of being able to do, to motivate, to be a change maker in the world, and yet being able to let go. How do we work with that?
You know, I'm thinking about Glassman Roshi's teachings on the three tenets of not knowing, bearing witness, and compassionate action. And one of the things about being a Western educated person is that we see that our identity is very rooted, very much rooted for many of us in what we know. And as a result of that, our conceptual mind gets between us and reality. And how can you, through the medium of practice, drop down into a place where you are genuinely open, where you are curious, where you have the capacity to bring this beginner's mind, again, a term from Suzuki Roshi, this kind of openness. You know, you were talking about children, you know, this kind of openness that children have to whatever's arising in the present moment. So not knowing is very difficult for Western people, and I think also for educated Eastern people as well. Again, because we are so identified with what we know and how we apply our knowing in terms of controlling our world. So that's the first tenet, I think, is really powerful, because if you have an outcome in mind, you know, you're in a trap right there. And it's not about caring, it's about control. That you're operating out of, you know, the need to control, not out of genuine caring. And then the second tenet is that of bearing witness. And in this case, when Roshi Bernie talked about bearing witness, he wasn't speaking about being an a bystander, being someone who objectifies whatever one is observing. It's samadhi, it's love, it's connection, it's non-separation, it's non-duality. So, you know, when we experience bearing witness, we're not separate from beings or things or the moment. We are actually deeply one with. And Bernie talks about one body. This is this one body practice. And out of not knowing and out of bearing witness then arises in a spontaneous, unprescribed way, compassionate action. So I think the three tenets are, you know, very helpful. When Bernie first shared them with me many decades ago, I was working in the prison system on death row and maximum security as a volunteer, and also the AIDS epidemic was happening. There was so much suffering, and I was coming alongside, you know, quite a few people dying of AIDS and also cancer at that time. This was, you know, a little less than 30 years ago. And when Bernie shared the three tenets with me, I was just so moved, because I, as someone who was, in this world of socially engaged Buddhism, realized that often I went into situations in a prescriptive way. And that caused, suffering for myself and for others. And also, I would bring my analytic mind into, what I thought would serve, instead of dropping deeply and being in that space of fundamental openness and to be guided by whatever was arising in the present moment. And then, of course, compassionate action arises from that. And a lot of times we have the notion that compassion is structured in a particular way. But I know from my good friend, the late neuroscientist, Francisco Varela, and he always said that compassion was fundamentally spontaneous. It was unprescribed. And I think this is one of the important things to realize, that compassion is a non-dual response to the presence of suffering in the present moment.
Wow. Thank you. So Rinpoche, talking about this prescribed, and when we think of these afflictive emotions and the antidote, right? For example, in this case, attachment and generosity. How do we cultivate that as an antidote? And what do you think in today's world, if this prescribed way and what Roshi Joan, kind of coming from Roshi Bernie, saying this unprescribed way, because you also talk a lot about this spontaneous manifestation. So if you want to talk more and expand on that, Rinpoche.
Yeah, so prescribed, unprescribed, and I have this term I'm not familiar. Today's first day I'm hearing it, so I think I have some idea. So generally in the teaching, when we talk about there's in terms of the compassion, they call conventional compassion or ultimate compassion. So conventional compassion is a progressional, conceptual process of paying attention to the suffering of others and trying to feel the empathy in yourself, and then trying to find some means of acting to support. And it's kind of cultivating progressional, and I guess it's prescribed in a way. You can call it prescribed. Idea of prescribed will be there is an identity in you who is prescribing it to do it in a particular way. So the identity is prescriber. So on unprescribed or ultimate compassion would mean probably some sense of you don't have some particular, even though we always have some kind, but in a particular given moment, you really feel totally open. Like I was talking about the children that, you would die for your kids, so we should be able to die for others, anybody. But it's harder to die for anybody, but your own children. And it's, you feel that kind of selflessness. So when you acting toward trying to help your people give example of mother's only child, or so that it's anything in getting burned in the house, you are right in front of the house is getting burned and your child is inside there. It's unprescribed, right? You just do it, whatever is that particular moment is necessary. It's not like you're going to sit in a particular position, do a particular breathing, you're going to do different stages of meditation, trying to feel the compassion. No, you just jump in the fire. So I guess those are in a sense of unprescribed. So definitely from Buddhist point of view will be that these both are very valuable and necessary, particularly in terms of the developmentally speaking, that when you cannot have unprescribed compassion, you do have to at least be open to prescribed compassion, at least able to reflect on what is lacking and what is needed, and trying to do your best to feel it, even though it is not spontaneously manifesting, right? I guess, and ultimately, yes, for sure, that compassion should be unprescribed. And not only compassion, I think in ultimately that every conduct, every human, spiritually connected conduct and actions that we do should be unprescribed, because it should be less to do with identity. Identity is always prescribing it. So if it has nothing to do with your particular identity, or at least very loose identity, very open identity, then only your act is unprescribing. Prescription has something to do with the pain is telling you what to do. Or even I wanted to do a meditation, that pain is telling you want to do. If I wanted to have a good compassion, that the pain is telling you want to have a good compassion. So it's some sense of unprescribed. I guess it means something like that.
Yes, thank you, Rinpoche. Thank you. And it also, Roshi, it reminds me a little bit of also formal and informal practice. Um, and so you do this a lot, right? So you have your formal practice that you sit. How would you recommend for people to do that in that formal practice? What are possibilities to do that then inspire you to do all the incredible work that you do? So is there a relationship between that formal, sometimes more prescribed practice that inspires you to bring that into the world in all the myriad of things, of ways that you do?
I mean, practice is practice. And that is to say, it's a method, a upaya for mind training. And it is about deconstructing the nature of the small self and opening one to this sense of interbeing, what Thich Nhat Hanh has called interbeing, non-separation from this moment, all beings and things, an identity that is hyper intersubjective and so forth. And practice is a deconditioning process. And fundamentally, it's a decentering process. And, where the rubber hits the road is in one's daily life. And there's a Japanese term, mu jodo no taigen, which means actualizing the way in your everyday life. So it's a bit like, if you're a Christian, church on Sunday, or a Jew, temple on Saturday, or whatever. Practice is the time when you're engaging in certain behaviors to develop a view that is basically liberated, that is basically compassionate. And the test for that is really, in our everyday lives. And I remember my old friend Ram Dass, said, if you, you can present yourself as a compassionate person in the world, but if you're yelling at your kids or you're carping at your spouse, or ask that person's family, the so-called enlightened person, what really is this person like? So, that's your everyday life, like Rinpoche with his children and wife. That's your everyday life. So this is where, I think that practice is so important because it helps you to untangle the tangle to a certain extent. But the tangle gets pulled tight in our everyday activities. And I appreciate, again, both Roshi Bernie's teachings and Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings, where both of them emphasize the importance of how we comport ourselves in our ordinary moment to moment, every day, non-special, not up on the pedestal, not wearing fancy clothes, how we comport ourselves in our everyday situation. And, in Zen, there's a deep emphasis on ordinariness, not on being extraordinary. And so, for example, there's Zazen, and Zazen is really important. Shikantaza, which is choiceless awareness practice that we do in the Zendo. But we do Samu, we do work practice. We try to bring the same quality of attention to how we, sweep the path or cut the carrots. Also in Zen, there's a profound emphasis on Sangha, how we actualize the way through our relationships with each other, that we are conscientious, caring, fundamentally generous, actualizing the paramitas, if you will. What is it to be not a highfalutin bodhisattva, but, just a bodhisattva that that loves, that cares, and that lives in community. So, in Buddhism, the three treasures of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. I remember Tai saying, when he spoke in the mid-'80s that the future Buddha would be the Sangha. Well, that's where our practice really shows up in our human relations, but also shows up in our relationship to the environment, in terms of consuming, caring for, stewarding, being of place, and so forth.
Thank you. And I want to come back to this spirit of generosity. And Rinpoche, how is, in your view, how does generosity being the one that untangles us from this sense of attachment? How can we cultivate that, and maybe, in a prescriptive way, so that then becomes unprescriptive or spontaneous? How does generosity become one of the methods, of the tools that we can cultivate to untangle ourselves from the grips of attachment?
Well, so when you say untangle of ourselves, then it clearly seems like a saying that the generosity, it's not giving what you can give or giving what you have. Ultimately, generosity is to challenge more what you're not able to give. What you are, basically, it comes down really in a deep place. It's not how much in terms of the possession, but how much in terms of even the identity that, sometimes we can say, I can let go of a lot of things, but identity, in the deep inside, we hold on our identity. That we cannot let go. So as again, identity could mean anything, like it could mean a father, a husband, a teacher, anything. So in the end, it's not, okay, I'll take care of somebody, I'll give something. But in the end, the biggest gift, generosity, seems letting go of yourself. It seems like personally, that's what I find it. It's in the end of the day, the biggest generosity seems is not what you do or what you give, but how much you're able to let go of yourself as a sense of. Of course, like a children or wife or student, they don't want you, but they want a lot of things from you. In a sense, children definitely say, "I want the freedom" or whatever. So that how you give that freedom, how you not ignore them, how you guide them, at the same time how you give the freedom. So that's a challenging experience. But in the end, some point, you have the biggest gift you can give to anybody is identity. Let go of this sense of as Roshi said about not controlling, caring, so that there's a tendency to always, in any relationship, especially when you're trying to take care of something, there's always they can be also controlling, right? So, this is what I find it is. In the end, you say, I trust the bigger picture, I trust the universe. There's something that I'm not getting it, I'm not understanding it, I'm trusting it. I let go of my own pain identities, wishes here, and at least take a little break from it, and then see what miracle and magic comes out of it. So now you see things work much better than when you're not controlling it. The universe is doing a much better job than we do.
Yeah, yeah. So finally, you were both in Blue Spirit, and you both talked to Gabor Mate, and I love that he used this Buddhist terminology for aspects of attachment and even addiction of wanting more, which is the hungry ghost, right? This aspect of the hungry ghost, and in many cases we all have a little bit of that, right? And how do we work with that? How do you we'll start Roshi in Upaya, or in your sangha, in your work. How does that you see it arise, and how, not just for yourself, but in the people that you train, that you teach, how what works for that letting go?
You know, I remember one of the precepts that we take in our order is do not cultivate a mind of poverty in yourself and others. And of course, that mind of poverty is, you know, as Rinpoche has said, it's related very much to the notion of who we are as a self. And I'm reminded of a story about Nelson Mandela. Years ago, I moderated an event between Mandela and Bishop Tutu, and Archbishop Tutu said of Mandela, actually, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu, and His Holiness said of Mandela that he fundamentally lacked empathy before he went into prison. And, you know, he suggested that what Mandela had been through in the experience of prison had been really a source of liberation for him, had humanized him deeply. And this is a story that's in a book called Chicali by Echeverria Martinez. And I want to share this story because I think it relates very much to what you're talking about, Rinpoche, and what we're exploring today. And what Mandela said, he says, you know, after becoming president, which was, you know, after some decades of being in prison, in a remarkable change in his destiny and in the destiny of South Africa. He said, I asked some of my bodyguard members to go for a walk in town. And after the walk, we went to lunch at a restaurant. And we sat in one of the most central ones. And each of us asked what we wanted. And after a bit of waiting, the waiter who brought our menus appeared. And at that moment, I realized that at the table that was right in front of ours was a single man waiting to be served. And when he was served, I told one of my soldiers, go ask that man to join us. And the soldier went and transmitted my invitation. And the man stood up, took the plate, and sat next to me. And while eating, his hands were constantly shaking. And he didn't lift his head from his food. And when we finished, he waved at me without even looking at me. I shook his hand and then walked away. And the soldier said to me, Madiba, that man must be very sick as his hands would stop shaking while he was eating. Not at all. The reason for his tremor is another, I replied. They looked at me weirdly and I said to them, that man was the guardian of the jail I was locked up in. Often, after the torture I was subjected to, I screamed and cried for water, and he came to humiliate me. He laughed at me, and instead of giving me water, he urinated on my head. He wasn't sick, he was scared and shook, maybe fearing that I now, as president of South Africa, would send him to jail and do the same thing he did with me, torturing and humiliating him. But that's not me. That behavior is not part of my character nor my ethics. Minds that seek revenge destroy states, while those that seek reconciliation build nations. So, you know, that story for me is about what generosity is. It's a state of mind. It's not just in the actions. It's a mind that is characterized by non-fear, by fundamental boundlessness, openness, you know, what Bernie, you know, talked about when he was teaching about not knowing. And that's the mind, I think, that is so difficult for many of us to access. Anyway, sorry about the pings, but anyway, I'm up in the mountains, so the situation's a little complicated here with the energy. In any case, I think that's what we're really exploring today, and that has to do with the relationship between non-fear and generosity.
Wow. Thank you, Roshi, for sharing that and the way you shared it. Thank you. As we start wrapping up, Rinpoche, any other aspects that you wanted to share at this point?
Thank you. Wonderful, Roshi, taking this time to be with us, and I appreciate very much. I'm sure our audience benefit a lot. So I hope in the future again we will have the opportunity to see each other again. Thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Thank you, Roshi. Thank you, Milos, and the whole team of Cyber Sangha, Polly and Lulu translating, and everyone. Thank you, because it is really a Cyber Sangha putting all this together. So with much appreciation and gratitude, thank you.
Ale.
Thank you.
You're coordinating all these things behind the scene.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you. Wonderful. And may everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you for listening to the Cyber Sangha podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Cyber Sangha, visit us online at cybersangha.net.